Okay, so we're back here for another panel discussion for the Phocuswire studio, and this one is arguably a little bit of navel-gazing, right? So what we thought would be interesting, because most of the panel sessions that you go to at a conference is usually industry people, and all the journalists are sat at the back and they're writing their stories, and we thought it might be quite interesting to hear what some of the journos are actually thinking. So we thought we'd get you guys along and we'd just have a little chat and see how we get on. Talk about some of the issues, some of the things that excite you about the industry, some of the things that you don't like, and some of the technology that you think is a bit crazy and overhyped. So that's what we're going to do. So thank you very much and welcome.
Thank you.
We've discovered we're all quite jet lagged. I think we've all agreed that we're all quite jet lagged today. So
totally.
you'll have to bear with us. So anyway, we'll come to you first, Siew. So I mean, you have been covering this industry probably for too long, like Arnie, like myself. I mean, what is it you like about this industry that makes you want to stay around and carry on writing about it?
Well, the fact that it takes me places to meet interesting people and try interesting foods. I think that's why we are in travel. I think the travel bug, like I caught that at such a young age, and I am still completely addicted to the travel bug. So that's what I like about travel. It takes me places.
Now, the obvious follow-up question there is, what do you dislike about it?
What do I dislike about it? The fact that it's jet lag. No matter how often you travel, you just can't get over that jet lag. And for all the tech that we talk about, why isn't there, a technology that solves jet lag?
Yeah.
Other than ambient.
Well, I mean, yes. Now you're coming to a topic near and dear to my heart, which is I'm a student of jet lag, and have figured out a number of strategies. I actually brought one with me, Kevin, if you wouldn't mind handing me. So these are Australian. They're called retimers, and they've discovered that blue light is one way to reset your circadian rhythm. So for an hour a day, right about when you're supposed to, you put these on.
That is so cool. It makes you look like an avatar.
Well, it's fun, and it's funny the way people react to you when you wear them in public places, because if you're going to truly get over jet lag, you've got to do it on the clock, not on your convenience. So for instance, I wore these last night at about 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock in China at an airport, because that was 8 or 9 o'clock here in the States, which is when I want my mind to think it's morning.
So Arnie, tell me, were you walking around the airport wearing those?
Yes.
And what kind of reaction did
So
you get?
it's interesting. So in China, people stare. I mean, they just absolutely stare without unabashed.
Like I am now.
Right. But when you go to, for instance, I was in the Delta Sky Lounge this morning, also wearing them too.
Dropping names.
And yes, and the Americans are much more glancers.
What does that say? What's the difference between the Chinese culture and the American culture? What does that tell you?
I think that there's been a lot of studies actually about the way that Chinese people look at things. I mean, literally look at them. And I know that you're jet lagged, so I'll let you wear them for a little while.
Should I wear that for an hour?
Well, yeah, you start now if you want.
How do I look, Kevin?
Can you see the blue? They look a little low.
Am I supposed to keep that on for an hour?
Okay.
So, sorry, Kevin.
No, it's fine.
We're
showcasing these to the world. It's great.
Yes.
So, I mean, we've talked about what you like and dislike. I mean, what excites you? And, let's talk about you're the figurehead of a very large part of the North Star Travel Group, lots of brands and things like that. I mean, what do you think really excites your journalists to want to cover something? What is it that really gets them going from an industry perspective?
So I think we all, as you mentioned, we all love to travel, and our office can be one day in Singapore, one day in New York, one day in Calcutta.
Yep.
So just what's the view out the window is certainly something that I think gets into all of our blood. But I think certainly for me, I always like to go someplace new rather than returning to a place. But I've also found that given enough time, a place changes so much it might as well be new. And once again, China, everything kind of seems to always circle back to China. When I first went to China, the area that's now Pudong, which is incredibly built up with high-rises, was a flat field. I have a picture of it with one little light of a farmhouse across the way. So, place and time play into very much what's exciting about travel and seeing those
So
changes.
is it though, Arnie, is it the concept of going to somewhere new, or do things that happen in the industry kind of excite your teams and your readers as well? So trends rather than the actual process of it. You know, so I mean, this audience here at Phocuswright, they're very interested in, for example, the direct booking debate between hotels and online travel agencies. So are there particular issues within your teams that you sense that they like getting their teeth into that type of story?
Yes, and I think it absolutely depends almost beat by beat.
Right, sure.
So for instance, our aviation editor is really focused on the changes in airports. He's focused on things like pilot shortages, which can have a long-term impact. It's not necessarily a sexy topic, but it's a very important topic. And I think kind of discovering those topics which aren't obvious, but actually have some impact are the things that get my team the most excited.
Yeah, what about you?
Well,
Siew?
you know, I mean, Changi Terminal has just opened Terminal 4, and that is setting a gold standard in airport, right? Airport facilities. So to me, that's really sexy to talk about, actually. But for me, what's the most exciting thing is I've been covering the industry, as we say, for too long. But I just feel like this moment is when the spotlight is on Asia.
Right.
I feel like the pendulum has finally swung. And I feel like, you know, we shouldn't talk about Asia anymore as emerging or promise, you know, because it's already here. And frankly, it's ahead.
It's leading.
It's leading, right?
It
I mean,
is.
you were in China. You saw some of the things that are happening there.
One of the things that most surprised me when I was just there 4 days ago was to the extent it has already become a cashless society.
Yes.
Where there are places that do not accept cash. They do not accept credit cards. If you don't have Alipay or WeChat, you're not buying.
Interestingly about China, I mean, what do you think Ctrip, for example, its ambitions are? It's got a strategic alliance with the Priceline Group, which is very interesting because you have these two powerhouses now. You've got Expedia Inc. and you've got Priceline Group with Ctrip. I mean, what do you think Ctrip's ambitions are really?
Globalization.
Yeah.
Because just like everybody else, you know, even though the market in China is huge, but, you know, they need to globalize.
Yeah.
It's like Alibaba, right? So, you know, for me, Asia is more than China. Yes, China is the headline, but, you know, there are really great supporting acts, you know, and I think the biggest story coming out of Asia is from the secondary cities, you know, which are actually huge cities, you know, and just a growing middle class. And that middle class is very young, is very social, is very mobile. So that's going to set new customer behavior that we haven't seen before.
Yes.
So to me, that's an exciting story, you know, the supporting act of Asia.
And I mean, the scale of Asia is certainly means that almost anything that happens is going to happen at a point where any business is going to be able to look at that and just say, incredible, which is, you know, Marco Polo's famous line was that if they could get the Chinese just to add 1 meter of fabric to their gowns, every mill in England would be busy forever.
Right.
And when you look at Ctrip specifically, they just bought Trip.com, an American company. And so they bought before that
they bought Skyscanner as well.
Which was Scottish.
Yeah.
And their ambition clearly is to take these pieces around the world.
What do you think? I mean, let's stick on this vein here because, you know, this audience here is probably really interested in the ambitions of Ctrip. What do you think the likes of Expedia and the Priceline Group, do they fear Ctrip? Obviously, they've done a strategic partnership with Priceline Group. I mean, what does Expedia, do you sense, think about the rise of a company like Ctrip?
I think they respect Ctrip.
Right.
I think, you know, I don't think about fear, but I think definitely respect.
I think they learn from it as well.
And watching what they're doing in terms of, you know,
that's interesting. To that point, then, what do you think Expedia would be able to learn from Ctrip?
How to work hard.
Okay.
and
not that you're suggesting that they don't work hard.
No.
You know, going back to the way that the Chinese see, to get to that for a minute, if you look at the Ctrip app, it doesn't look a thing like the Expedia app. It is a completely different way of looking at booking. And I would guess that, you know, Expedia is not going to come out with a identical app tomorrow, but I think they're paying attention, and I think they're looking for ways they can introduce some of those types of behaviors because they are efficient and they make sense.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's very interesting. So, but I suppose just on that point, last of all then, I mean, we've seen US and Western companies try to target Asia and haven't managed to have an impact perhaps as much as they would like. Why do you think that? Why do you think they haven't managed to do so?
Well, I think in the beginning they probably, for me it's about commitment. It's about a long game, right? And I think if you look at Expedia and Booking.com, they've been there for years and years,
Yeah.
You just don't go in there and say, expect returns, right? You got to till the soil. And I think, and find the right partner and look at what Expedia has done in Indonesia, right? They have taken a $350 million investment in Traveloka because they know they need to have the local heroes on the ground to basically bolster their presence in Asia.
And I think they're also, if you look at something, let's go out of the tech realm for a second to cruising. So you would think that right now the capacity of all the cruise lines that are there now is 1 million. So out of all of China, you'd think I think 20 million go to Thailand every year. That if they just could get 1 million on the cruise ships, they'd be full, 100% full at a price they want. And they're finding that it is much more difficult. 2 years ago, I would say there was a euphoria in the cruise industry when they were salivating over China. And today, they're brought down to earth. That this is not a market that just absolutely responds the way that they would expect it to respond.
Yeah.
It's a different model.
Different culture, different
evolution
behavior.
is at a different speed. Yeah. All sorts of things are very different.
I really found the panel that you moderated at WIT, the cruise panel, so interesting. But my thinking for that is that, again, I think how the cruise market will evolve in Asia in terms of online will be very different from how it has evolved in the US.
Why is that?
Well, because the customers probably are younger.
Yes,
the customers are younger.
Yep.
The trips are shorter. Right, so I think you're not seeing maybe the higher ticket transactions that may have.
Yeah, it's the question.
I don't know.
The question, they want those ticket prices to be quite high, of course. The question always with why, if you Phocuswright here, the Phocuswright conference, year after year after year, I've been coming and watching the innovators, the entrepreneurs present. I have never seen one presenter say, "Here's my cruise app. Here's how we're going to do cruise bookings." Zero. And I think there's a couple of reasons. One reason is if you look at the scale of all the cabins there are, it's nothing compared to how many hotel rooms there are. So the scale of cruising is still relatively small. And the second thing, it's a considered sale. It's not something people are likely.
Maybe it will be less so in Asia. I don't know.
Yeah,
maybe that's the bet that I'm taking.
We'll just wrap up then.
Right,
No, it's fine. So last of all then, what do you think is a trend or an issue in the industry that's frankly overhyped, often by the likes of us?
I would say hotel room technology.
Okay.
And I would say that, for instance, if it takes me longer to figure out how to open the curtains than to open the curtains, that is an unnecessary piece of technology.
There was an innovator on here this morning that was an automatic
the maid bot.
Vacuum cleaner.
The maid bot.
Maid bot.
No, okay. So my issue is that why is it called Rosie?
The Jetsons.
Something to do with the Jetsons.
Yeah, that was the name of the maid.
Which would be lost on the likes of you and I. So overhyped, Siew. What's overhyped for you?
I think for me the same. I have a Samsung bot at home, even though I have a small apartment, and you still need a human to clean up, right? So I think hotel technology. I think AI clearly is overhyped, right? Because everybody knows that if you use the term AI, the investors will prick up and say, oh yeah, I got to listen to this. So I think that's definitely an overhyped term.
Okay, so thank you very much. Any particular speakers that you're looking forward to hearing the rest of the week? Just quickly give us a name that you're looking forward to hearing.
Well, I want to hear, I'm going to get his name wrong, Ackerstrom? The new CEO, Mark Hockstrom.
Okay.
The new CEO.
I was going to say that, but to be different, and I hope it's not a plug for myself, but the panel that I'm moderating, the next big thing with Steve Hafner, Paul English, and Brett Kutzner.
So that will be entertaining, if nothing else. So thank you very much, Arnie Weissman and Hoon Yeoh. So thank you very much. We'll be back soon.